Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today, on episode 3 of Manat Reads, we are going to be discussing Open Intelligence by Saikat Majumdar. I just wanted to put it out here before we get into the book that I'm going to now be dividing this video into 3 parts: the good, the bad, and my final thoughts. So, without further ado, let's straight away get into the good of the book. So, the good, obviously, the content. The content of this book is excellent. I think his writing style is very persuasive, yes, yet expository. So he is trying to persuade you with what he has already listed out, the facts and all the different statistics and all the details that he wants to. And he's trying to persuade you to think about it in that direction. And I thoroughly enjoy reading people's persuasive writing because it does open up a lot about how they think of things, and that is entirely why I read books. I think it's the most fun part about reading a book. It's not a very traditional book about AI. Like, it doesn't talk about, oh yeah, this is what AI can do and that is what AI can do. No, I think the nuance here is it talks about how basically, like the cover says, it's education between art and artificial. So he talks about how a lot of AI and a lot of use cases of AI these days have become to start using it for your assignment, your college, your education, or your job for that matter, all of that. But what is AI really capable of? Like, what is it going to do? How is it going to evolve? How is it going to develop a society? Ourselves, like, how are we going to develop as people because of it, and what is going to come out of it? In India right now, if you're not from India, or if you're from India, you know that there's a big protest happening across India regarding the paper leakages in NEET, CUET, CBSE, etc., all of that. And our education system is slightly on the brink of breaking. We do know that India's education doesn't have a solid base, so there's a lot of emphasis on rote learning, a lot of emphasis on getting through an academic test just for the sake of getting into an educational institute. That is not what education really is, but that is unfortunately what we've made it to be here. And this book very perfectly sums up how we need to reevaluate what education is going to look like because of AI. Is it going to be that you put in a prompt and you get an answer and that's education now? Like, is that it? But that can't be it, right? He gives a very good example of Khan Academy, how they have an AI assisted chatbot for their students, and how it actually helps them think more critically about the question that they've asked, and how it leads the kids to a conclusion for that question themselves without giving them the answer directly. I think that's incredibly smart. And of course, it is still new, so it can evolve and be much better, and also probably open up different avenues in your brain. Like, you could think of things very differently with the assistance of AI. Like, AI doesn't need to tell you how to think, but you can take its help to learn how to think differently and to probably open up your knowledge portals, so to say. So yeah, there are really, really good examples like that. There are also like examples of how AI was not used correctly, like during the Rohingya crisis, and how Facebook had a lot of information about where they were and they were getting persecuted. So that was also something that stayed with me. There are really good like one-liners from the books, like quotes, so to say, that I really like. So I'm going to read out one. I have it on my laptop here, so I'm just going to look at my laptop and read it. It says, to stay relevant, human beings will simply have to imagine knowledge and aptitude in new ways, which will also enter into relationships with perpetually expanding intelligence of the machine. Basically telling you how we need to start understanding how education is going to change in order to also learn how the machine will change. I think this is basically how he wants to, or his thought about this is. I had another really good line from the book that I have actually written, best line to summarize the book. It says, that crucial question for students and educators is how to design education that allows human beings to stay unique and competitive as AI moves from AGI to ACI. So how it moves from artificial general intelligence to artificial competent intelligence. Like general intelligence is what it is now. Like you ask it something, it gives you back an answer. Competent intelligence is when it is independently able to take decisions. So where does education fall in this when AI is able to take independent decisions? That, in my opinion, is when ACI becomes more popular or mainstream, is actually when AI will start replacing jobs. With AGI right now, it's highly unlikely that you can replace jobs because you need to train the model a lot to understand if it's able to understand what you even do. But yeah, so it gives out really, really good, details in this book. It only has 5 chapters and it's a fairly short book. So I would say easily readable. I took some time to read it. I actually read multiple books at a time, so don't go by me. I think you can read it in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is like the max amount of time I take to read any book, so maybe even less time than that. Okay, so let's move on to the bad. Okay, so I just actually want to start off by saying that I don't think any book is inherently bad. I think all books have a message to give away and you learn something from it regardless of what kind of book you're reading. Even a really bad young adult romance book. You learn something from every book if you're open to learning something from it. So I'm just going to rephrase it and say the weaker aspect of the book. But I have really no complaints from this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I put down the book a couple of times. I wrote down a couple of things I thought I wanted to read more about. There's a lot of different people's work that he's referenced, which also I looked up and I saw. One thing I didn't know before I wrote the review and I was writing down like research on this book was that it has a prequel called College, Pathways and Possibilities, which is the first. Apparently this is a sequel to that book, but while reading this book I didn't feel like this had a prequel, but he did reference the work of that book here. So maybe if you have the time and you're interested, I would recommend you read that book first and then come to this one, because it does, I think, give you a more holistic perspective on his thought and what he's trying to say here. But otherwise, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I don't think there was any weak aspect or bad aspect as such. Yeah, so moving on to the final thoughts of the book. Final thoughts. What do I think about this book? I think it has put me in sort of this question. So I don't know if other people have been having this question or not, but I have been thinking about, okay, if I have to go back to academics, what really should I study? Like, what is that one job that's not replaceable, or like, will everything be eventually, if not replaced, at least assisted by AI? And I currently have no idea if there's something like that, or maybe I haven't researched enough. But I think this book really opens up that nuance in education, right? Like, do you need to redo education entirely? Like, should we be writing that book from scratch? And in my opinion, the answer is yes. I think a lot of colleges need to rethink what degrees and what their curriculum now teaches. I think it's a really good read for students, especially in this scenario in India. I can't emphasize enough with the whole protest against, the education ministry and their lapse in judgment for the paper leaks, etc. You need to read to understand what you want to ask for. Asking for the resignation of a minister is one thing. That is only demanding accountability. But what do you really want from the government? Like, what do you want to change? Just the minister? No, right? Like, we want something better to come out of that. I think parents should read this book. If you have kids going to school, college, read this book to understand what change you want to ask for. Till then, you don't know what to ask for. You can't go out there and be like, we demand change. What is the change you demand for? That is why I think this is such a great, refreshing book. And I think I wouldn't say maybe school students can probably understand the nuances of this book, but I also, like, I was a dumb school kid, so were most of my classmates, but I feel like nowadays school kids are really, really smart and intelligent, and maybe they do have the thinking capability to get with this book and understand what he's trying to say, so for sure. And if you're in the policy sector, if you're someone who's interested in, education for the underprivileged, I highly recommend something like this, because traditional form of education is very hard to change, but when you are mentoring someone, when you are, like, say, part of a smaller institution that is teaching people to do something not very mainstream education or mainstream school, I think that can change a lot of lives, and that can also help you think outside the box. So those are my final thoughts on this book, and I absolutely loved it. I am very generous with my ratings, and I'm going to give this a 5 on 5 because very enjoyable, very refreshing, and I think it's sort of like something people should be reading now to understand what to do next. And yeah, that's what I think of this book. And now we're going to be reading the next book. First, I thought I'd read a book about economics, but I thought too much like society economics. So I had bought another book called The House of Huawei, with the Chinese brand Huawei, and it talks about the rise of that company in China and what they've built. So I'm excited to see. It's a slightly longer book. I haven't started reading it yet. So we'll see where we get with that. And then stay tuned for my review of that book. See you and ciao.